Good evening and welcome. I am Uyai Anyeka and come to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. This is Spotlight Africa, brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. Today on Spotlight Africa, ECOWAS force says they are ready to invade Niger. U.S. concerned by worsening violence in Mali. Kenyan senator in scholarship scam freed on bail. Senegal opposition hero in intensive care. Plus, Cameroonian fights White House over press access. These stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. To begin Spotlight Africa today, we look at an update from the Niger coup where troops of the economic community of West African states have said they are ready to participate in a standby force that could intervene in the Republic of Niger. After the coup seized power from President Mohamed Bazoum, ECOWAS issued a 7-day ultimatum to the military to restore the president or risk sanctions, including possible military action. Now, according to reports at a meeting in Ghana's capital, Accra, today, the defense chief said they're prepared to reinstate the democratic order in Niger. It would be recalled that the ECOWAS defense chiefs began their meeting in Ghana today. The Accra meeting of top army commanders today and Friday came after fresh violence in Niger, with jihadists killing at least 17 soldiers in an ambush. Meanwhile, 20 more soldiers were wounded, 6 seriously, in the heaviest losses since the July 26 coup, when the presidential guard ousted Bazoum and detained him and his family. Jihadist insurgencies have gripped Africa's Sahel region for more than a decade, breaking out in northern Mali in 2012 before spreading to neighboring Niger and Burkina Faso in 2015. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry in Niger says at least 17 soldiers have been killed in an Islamist militant attack. Another 20 were said to be wounded. The ambush happened in the Taliberi region, close to the border with Burkina Faso. The military said more than 100 attackers were killed as they escaped the scene. Meanwhile, the government offered their condolences to the families of those affected. This is the 7th attack on the country's forces since military officers overthrew the government in Niamey about 3 weeks ago. Niger's army has cited the jihadist insurgency as a justification for last month's coup. In a related development still on matters related to Niger, military-appointed Prime Minister Ali Zien has made an unannounced visit to neighboring Chad as West African states set talks for mulling possible military intervention to reverse the country's coup. The Chadian government said that Zien, a civilian appointed by the military rulers who ousted Nigerian President Mohamed Bazoum on July 26, arrived in Chad for a working visit. In a statement issued after meeting Chadian President Mohamed Idris Deby Itno, Zien said he had brought a message of good neighborliness and good fraternity from the head of Niger's government, adding that Niger is in a process of transition. Moving away from that, the United States has expressed concern over the threat of worsening violence in Mali, citing attacks on United Nations peacekeepers. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the attacks were unacceptable and condemned such violence and the larger threat posed by armed actors operating there. On Monday, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, MINUSMA, said it had been forced to withdraw earlier than usual from the northern town of Beir amid deteriorating security. It said that its withdrawing forces had been attacked twice, with some of the soldiers injured. The United States Department says the attacks highlight the threat of worsening violence and the importance of all Malian parties settling their differences peacefully. In another development, popular Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who's been on hunger strike for 2 weeks in protest against his detention, has been taken into intensive care, according to his allies. Pastev says the authorities were responsible for Sonko's condition after they charged and detained him for insurrection and conspiracy against the state, among other crimes. There has been no statement from the authorities on Sonko's condition. He plans to run for president in February next year, but has been engaged in a bitter power struggle with the authorities since 2021, when he was placed under investigation in a moral corruption case. In June, Sonko was sentenced in absentia to 2 months in prison, which he claimed was politically motivated. That triggered angry clashes by supporters that left 24 people dead, according to Amnesty International. The next month, he was arrested, and earlier this week, he was charged with fomenting insurrection. Elsewhere, Cameroonian journalist Simon Atiba has persisted in his fight against the White House days after filing a lawsuit challenging the cancellation of his press pass. In recent interviews and social media posts, Atiba has claimed that the White House discriminated against him. Filed last Thursday against White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre and the Secret Service. Atiba alleged that the White House targeted him by introducing a credentialing policy to block him from renewing his White House press pass. The rule change led to Atiba and more than 400 other White House reporters losing their passes. We move down to Tanzania, where 3 journalists and 1 language interpreter have allegedly been injured by a group of young Maasai people living in the Ngorongoro conservation area in northern Tanzania. It's Brike Bajuta, the Deputy Commissioner for Conservation in the area, told newsmen that the attack happened as the journalists were monitoring how authorities have been providing conservation-based education to the citizens living there. Bajuta reports the injured are being treated at a hospital in the neighboring town of Karatu. It comes amid a row that erupted last year between the government and some Maasai community members opposed to the authorities moving them from what they call their ancestral land. Over now to Kenya. A petition to ban TikTok has triggered a debate among Kenyan members of parliament and citizens to outlaw TikTok, citing concerns that the platform threatens Kenya's cultural and religious values. The petitioner also said that Kenya's weak regulation of TikTok has caused the proliferation of offensive and inappropriate content on the platform. Ndolo added that the ban would shield Kenyans against the negative effects of TikTok, including addiction, which could disrupt the education and mental health of students. Ndolo also expressed concern that the APP could be illegally collecting or sharing Kenyans' personal data. Still in Kenya, where a high court has released on bail a senator and 2 former county officials linked to a scholarship scandal. The 3 were arrested on Wednesday on allegations that they conspired to steal about 1.1 billion Kenyan shillings meant to fund further education for Kenyan students in Finland and Canada. The senator and his co-accused are expected to face not begin until all the 4 suspects were presented in court. Meanwhile, Kenyan police had on Wednesday tweeted that one of the suspects, Joseph Maritim, had fled the country. Moving away from that, Libyan medical sources say clashes between two powerful armed factions in Tripoli have killed 27 people and wounded more than 100 others. It would be recalled that violence broke out late on Monday after the Special Deterrence Force (SDF) seized a commander of the 444 Brigade. Reports say the fighting shattered months of relative calm in Tripoli and threatens to upset that. Elsewhere, police in Zimbabwe have arrested 40 members of an opposition coalition who were campaigning ahead of elections next week. They were detained in the Glenue suburb of the capital, Harare. Citizens Coalition for Change (CCC) spokesperson Fadzayi Mahare said that Gladmore Hakata, the party's Glenue South Member of Parliament's candidate, was among those arrested. A police statement shared on social media said the CCC had engaged in activities not mentioned in their notification for a rally in the suburb. According to police, they held a vehicle procession, obstructed traffic, and chanted party slogans on the streets, prompting a police response after a resident reported the matter. It will be recalled that last month the opposition called on the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to take action against those who use the police to disrupt their rallies. More than 60 migrants feared dead in the Atlantic. Stay tuned for details of these and more after this time out. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. Now to the rest of the stories on Spotlight Africa. We see residents and opposition groups accuse government troops in Ethiopia's largest Oromia region of killing multiple civilians as men that at least 10 civilians, including 4 members of a family, were killed by government forces. A resident, Arasa Yadisa, said 4 members of his family and 2 farm workers in his village were killed in a single incident. Meanwhile, the armed group, the Oromo Liberation Army (OLA), widely operates in the area. However, Arasa said there had been no fighting between OLA and government forces prior to the attack. In another incident, a university student said he and 3 other young people were taken by security forces from their village and only him managed to survive after the security forces opened fire on them. Away from that, the majority of participants of a 3-day meeting in the Democratic Republic of Congo's parliament have voted to lift military rule in 2 eastern provinces deeply affected by long-raging insecurity. Reports say the state of siege, where military authority replaced civil rule, was put in place by the central government in May of 2021 with an aim of fighting armed groups operating in Ituri and North Kivu provinces. But a recent report to the United Nations Security Council by Secretary General Antonio Guterres last week said the situation has become worse in the 2 provinces where about 4 million people have been displaced. Moving away from that, in the meantime, at least 7 people have died after a boat carrying nearly 300 people sank in the Mai-Ndombe province in the western part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Authorities are still searching for survivors amid fears of toll rising. According to eyewitnesses, the boat's wooden structure split into 2, causing the vessel to sink. Reports say many of the passengers were public servants traveling to a neighboring town for a routine checkup. DR Congo lacks appropriate infrastructure and control mechanism to guarantee the safety of people traveling via its waterways. Experts often attribute such incidents to boat overloading and poor maintenance. It will be recalled that in 2019, at least 30 bodies were recovered after a boat carrying about 400 people capsized in the same province. In a rather sad development, several West African migrants have been found dead aboard a boat drifting off Cape Verde, along with around 40 survivors. The exact number of casualties is unconfirmed. The boat had reportedly set up from Senegal a month ago with around 100 people on board. It is believed the vessel was heading for the Spanish Canary Islands, a popular gateway for migrants to the European Union. Meanwhile, thousands of people fleeing poverty and war risk their lives to make the dangerous crossing each year, often in modest boats or motorized canoes supplied by smugglers. In a related development, more than 60 mostly Senegalese people are feared dead after their boat was found drifting about 300 kilometers from the Atlantic island nation of Cape Verde. Reports say 7 out of 38 survivors are receiving treatment at a hospital. Their wooden fishing boat was found a month after it set off from Senegal with more than 100 migrants on board. Meanwhile, officials in Senegal said they were making arrangements to bring survivors home. Cape Verde officials have called for global action on migration to help prevent further loss of life. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, fugitive Fulgence Kashima, who has been in custody in South Africa, has been arrested again on an order for his transfer to Arusha, Tanzania, to stand trial for genocide. He was arrested while in the holding cells at the High Court in Cape Town yesterday. Reports say Kashima is to answer to charges that he allegedly orchestrated the killing of approximately 2,000 Tutsi refugees at a Catholic church in Rwanda during the 1994 genocide. Now, according to reports, the developments were at the risk of the United Nations International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. We move now to Ghana, where we see an imposition of a 10% tax on betting and lottery winnings effective from Tuesday. The Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, says the new withholding tax on all betting, games and lottery wins will be deducted at the point of payout. Now, according to the GRA, in situations where a game is cancelled and the player's stake is returned or the value of the payout is less or equal to the amount staked, withholding tax will not apply. Lottery operators have been directed to make changes to their software to display the amount staked, winnings and tax withheld during payout for easy tracking by the Revenue Authority. GRA Commissioner Edward Gramia says the tax will boost domestic tax revenue mobilization as Ghana's total tax to GDP is very low compared to that of others in the sub-region. Lastly, on Spotlight Africa today, South African athlete Oscar Pistorius, who has spent 6 years in prison for the murder of his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp, has asked the Constitutional Court to declare him eligible for parole. This comes after his bid for parole was denied in March when it was revealed that he had not served the minimum required sentence to qualify for early release. Pistorius was found guilty of murder and was given a 13-year jail sentence in 2017 after a long and dramatic trial and several appeals. He shot and killed Steenkamp through the bathroom door of his high-security home on Valentine's Day in 2013, claiming that he had mistaken her for an intruder. He believes he qualifies to be released on parole and that staying longer in prison constitutes an infringement on his fundamental rights. However, the country's top appeals court explained earlier this year that the 6-time Paralympic gold medalist still needs to spend another year and a half in jail before he could be considered for parole. The confusion was brought by the fact that Pistorius' time in prison had been broken up by appeals and by time he spent on the house arrest. And that's all we have for you today. This has been Spotlight Africa, brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You can also follow us at planetradio.ng. I am Uyai Aniek, and thanks for being a part of this and to enjoy the rest of your evening. Good evening.